Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good whatever time of day it is. Thank you for tuning in to Conversations with Dr. Don. Now, for your first-time viewers, Conversations with Dr. Don is an ongoing series of one-hour standalone talk shows where I interview interesting people like most of you out there about who they are, where they came from, and whatever it is we've decided to talk about. And the title of the show this evening is The Plight of the Postal Service. And we will figure out what that title means as we get into our discussion. My guest is Jamie Partridge on my right here. Thank you, Jamie, for coming on.
Pleased to be here. Thank you, Dr. Don.
Yeah. And how are you feeling right now?
Well, I'm feeling pretty good right now. How are you feeling?
I'm nervous, a little less nervous than I was a while ago, because we got a new studio we're operating in, and the studio has been upgraded, and we're anticipating a little glitches here and there, and this makes me nervous, as I'm prone to be anyhow. But anyhow, let's get on with the show, okay? As you know, my shows go for an hour, and the first half hour or so is dedicated to talking about who you are personally, and so people will have an idea where you're coming from when you talk about the plight of the post office, or the Postal Service, or anything else we talk about. So without getting too personal, I'll talk to you about who you are personally. Can I do that?
Okay.
So let's get started.
You're going to spring some surprises on me, huh?
Can I?
Go ahead. I may refuse to answer, but.
And then I'll yell at you.
What do you want to know?
If I were to ask your best friend, who is Jamie? What would your best friend say? Jamie is?
Well, Jamie's a retired letter carrier, passionate about saving the Postal Service. Yeah. I delivered the people's mail for 27 and a half years. Loved it. One of the best jobs in America. Good pay, good benefits. Got to know the 500 people on my route who I still live in the community where I delivered the mail, where I have lived for 20 years. And, I watch children grow up, leave home. I watch old people get frail, and
so you're telling me, Jamie, what you're seeing yourself as. I asked you what your best
my best friend?
You would say Jamie is?
Well, Jamie's an activist. Does that help?
Of course it does. Thank you. I wanted to hear it from your own mouth.
Okay.
Okay, now my surprise question. When and where were you born? That's not the surprise question yet. I changed my mind.
Berkeley, California.
Berkeley, California. And when was that?
1949.
49. Why were you born?
Why was I born?
Why does everyone always repeat my question? Is there an echo in here?
Because I'm a baby boomer.
That's my surprise question. Does it surprise you?
Yeah, I don't really have an answer for that.
Yeah, okay.
I think my parents were responsible, but I'm not entirely sure.
It's going to be one of those evenings, fellas, I'll tell you. Anything significant about your cultural heritage that's worth telling the viewers about? Are you playing American white bread? Nothing significant?
No, nothing really significant there.
If I ask you a question that you don't care to answer, you already told me that you're going to tell me where to go if I ask you a question.
Yes, I will. I'll tell you.
How about, do you have a religious preference? Is that an appropriate question?
No.
Okay. And how about your formal education?
Formal education, I have been to 3 different colleges and graduated from none.
Okay, and why is that?
And why is that? Because I found a job where I got involved with organizing a union and got excited about union organizing, and I decided that I wanted to get into a workplace that had a union, and I got on at Fred Meyer's and Safeway, and then got laid off, and then got on at the Postal Service.
Have you always been
27 and a half years ago?
27 and a half years ago.
At the Postal Service.
At the Postal Service. How did you become so interested in unions and being a union man?
Well, I just saw it as an opportunity to help change people's lives in a dramatic way to make things more fair. People get dignity and respect on the job through unions and through organizing, basically. It's an opportunity to help people learn how to organize and help people organize. And I'm still doing it, even though I'm still in a union, but I'm not working anymore. I'm helping people organize to save the Postal Service.
And how's that going?
It's an uphill struggle. It's an uphill struggle because the major media is not on our side, Congress is not on our side, the President is not on our side, and the Postmaster General is not on our side.
Who's the R you're talking about now?
American public and the postal workers.
Yeah. And why aren't they on our side, those people you just mentioned?
Why are they not on our side?
Yes.
Well, that's a good question. I think that many of them have different, but there's a portion of Congress that wants to see the Postal Service sold off to the 1%, privatized.
Yeah.
And I believe that the private sector would like to get a hold of this $67 billion enterprise and make some profit off of it. And they're having a huge influence on Congress and on the Postmaster General and on the President. So and the major media is owned by the 1%, so of course they...
So we'll talk a little more about that in the second half of the show.
All right.
How about other education? Did you take any special classes other than your colleges?
Well, I was trained as a medical lab technician. Actually, I did get an associate degree from Portland Community College and went to work for Kaiser and lasted 6 months and got fired.
Is it funny that you got fired?
Well, I wasn't suited for it. You know, I'm looking over a microscope watching these cells go by, and you know, I'd fall asleep. It wasn't for me. So, you know, I got a job where I was active and working as a letter carrier I was well suited for that. Outside. 6-7 hours a day.
Do you have a partner, a boyfriend, girlfriend, wife, whatever?
Not at this time. I've been married twice, once for 20 years, once for 10. I have 4 children and 4 grandchildren.
Yeah. Are you looking to marry again?
I'm not going to answer that question.
Hey, good. You have permission to not answer that question.
You didn't tell me you're going to ask me all these questions.
like if I get too personal, just I'll stop. Yeah. What I'm doing is being a matchmaker. Now and then a person isn't married and they say they're available, and I say, hey, look in the camera for you folks. But anyhow, let's keep going.
Please.
Your political persuasion, is that an appropriate question? Are you left, right, or center, or what?
Well, I'm definitely left. Yeah. I mean, I believe the Postal Service should be a public good and owned by the people and not privatized, and that's generally associated with left-wing thinking.
Okay. Do you have any memberships in the political, social, or civic organizations?
Lots of them.
Lots of them. Would you care to name a few or not?
Sure. I'm a founding member of the Jobs with Justice Coalition.
Jobs with Justice.
And a member of the National Association of Letter Carriers.
Founding member.
Well, no, that's the union is over 100 years old, so I'm not a founding member, but I helped found the organizing committee of our local branch, and I'm an organizer with Communities and Postal Workers United, which is a nationwide grassroots network made up of coalitions to save the Postal Service.
You're really an activist, aren't you? You really are an activist.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great life. You know, when you see a lot of things wrong in the world, I mean, you sit back and take it, you cry about it, you whine about it, or you get active, you know? I mean, fighting the good fight, right?
Yes.
Win or lose.
Fighting the good fight, yeah. Any persons alive today or from the past that you particularly admired or admire or look up to? Any names come to mind?
I'm sorry, people that are alive today?
Or from the past.
Or from the
dead
past.
now, that you particularly admired or admire today or look up to. Any names come to mind?
Well, I think Martin Luther King Jr. is, I've studied him quite a bit and the kind of leadership that he provided to the movement.
Yes,
and I admire a lot of the labor organizers from the 30s.
course, you don't like Cesar Chavez, do you?
Of course I do.
Yeah.
Cesar Chavez, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. You're too young to know about FDR.
I know about him.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't. I was born after he died.
Yeah. All right. So tell me about your work life. All these 27 and a half years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So delivering the people's mail on a daily basis, 500 families, right?
Mm-hmm.
And not only did I deliver people's mail, but I watched what was going on in the community, and I knew what was happening, and I helped, lost children find their way home, or elders who fell down, help pick them up, and letter carriers, we help connect the community. We help people feel connected with each other, and that's what the Postal Service does. Now, do I get to talk about the Postal Service yet?
Yeah. Okay. What about? I've heard politicians say that the Postal Service is going broke.
Okay, we'll talk about that.
Yeah, can we talk about that? What do they mean by that?
Well, you'll hear that in the news, and you'll hear that from certain politicians. It's not true. The Postal Service is not going broke.
Well, they're saying that.
Well,
or they're saying something that isn't true.
That's correct. The Postal Service, in terms of revenue and expenses, is not broke. Mm-hmm. But Congress has imposed, as of 2006, a manufactured crisis on the Postal Service. In 2006, Congress mandated that the Postal Service pre-fund retiree health benefits 75 years in advance, within 10 years, so that 10% of the postal budget goes to pre-fund retiree health benefits for people who not only don't work for the Postal Service yet, they're not even born yet. And no other agency has to do that. No company would do that, especially not in a recession. So it's not the internet, it's not labor costs, it's not private competition, it's not even the recession. It's this pre-funding mandate that the Congress has imposed on the Postal Service that is pushing it into debt and pushing it, to the point where on August 1st, the Postal Service defaulted, was not able to make one of these payments that Congress has imposed on it. And that's why the media is saying that the Postal Service is broke. But it actually has been self-sufficient since 1971, no taxes, and bringing in enough revenue to pay for expenses.
So the general population does not like that idea?
It's not like what you
doesn't like the idea of funding the Postal Service having to fund way in the future like that?
Well, when people find out about it, they're outraged, and they say, well, why would Congress do such a thing, and why doesn't Congress fix it? And I have the same question, and we went into that a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
Congress is stuck. Congress, we have been, that is, those of us in the postal worker unions and public who's concerned about the situation, have been lobbying Congress for 2 years. We've been, making phone calls, we've been writing letters to the editor, emails, visits to Congress, hearings, town halls, marches, rallies, petitions, and we've got a bipartisan majority, 229 co-sponsors on a bill in the House of Representatives, mm-hmm. H.R. 1351, which would fix the finances, which would fix this pre-funding problem. But the House leadership has refused to allow it to come to the floor for a vote. It's been sitting in committee for almost a year.
Why won't they allow it to come up for a vote?
Because I believe that they want the Postal Service to fail. They want the Postal Service to go bankrupt and then basically get broken up and the profitable portions sold off to the private sector, and the unprofitable portions, like the rural communities, like the low-income communities, will be set adrift with higher prices and poor service.
So I think we said earlier that if the general population knew what we're talking about right now to that extent, they would rebel and tell Congress to behave differently.
That's part of what I see my mission in the world right now, is to get the word out to the general population about this pre-funding mandate that's killing the Postal Service. And there's also another piece of this puzzle, which people don't know about, which the public doesn't know about, which the media isn't telling people about, which is that there's, in the pension funds, a huge surplus. There's the Office of Inspector General for the Postal Service and the Postal Regulatory Commission have determined, with independent audits, that there's $60 to $85 billion surplus in the pension funds. So there's over $100 billion with these retiree health benefits and the surplus in the pension fund that's sitting there. The Postal Service can't get access to its own funds. Congress won't allow it to have access to its own funds. And so as of August 1st, the Postal Service has defaulted on its payments. Well, I think that's fine, actually, that the Postmaster General decided he's not going to make these pre-funding payments, as you know, the first one on August 1st. There's another one on September 30th. He's not going to make that one either. He said he's going to stop making payments into the retirement funds. It's a good thing. That's fine. But unfortunately, the Postmaster General, even though he's not going to make these payments, and the Postal Service has enough revenue coming in to meet expenses, he's going forward with massive cuts and closures, closing mail processing plants, cuts to post offices, and closures to post offices. And that's of tremendous concern to me, and should be a tremendous concern to the public.
And the gradual march toward privatization.
Yes.
Then why is it, since we have CNN and Fox News and all those news networks, and they're telling us the reality of what's going on, how is it that the people aren't aware of what you're saying right now?
Well, I'm telling you that they're not telling you, that they are not telling you the story, the true story.
Isn't CNN telling the true story?
Maybe every once in a while, but I'll tell you that the Oregonian is not. In fact, I got so upset with the Oregonian editorial board for their misinformation and distortions that I called them up and read them the Riot Act, and they invited some of us in to speak to them. And they've done a little better. We did the same thing in Washington, D.C. with the Washington Post, with their misinformation, their disinformation. We actually had a demonstration out in front of the Washington Post, and they didn't change their editorial policy, but some of the reporters reported about this pre-funding mandate and about this surplus in the pension funds, and about the fact that the Postal Service is really not going broke, but the Postmaster General is still going forward as of July 1st with closing 48 mail processing plants, February 140 mail processing plants. By January of 2014, 259 mail processing plants. Half the mail processing plants in the country are going down, 48,000 jobs. And in Oregon, that's half the mail processing plants. The plant in Salem, the plant in Eugene, Springfield, the plant in Bend, the plant in Pendleton are all scheduled to go down, which means hundreds of jobs, good paying jobs, and delay of the mail. It means that, well, and as of July 1st, the Postmaster General has changed the standards for delivery of first-class mail, saying that it no longer will overnight first-class mail be guaranteed. So, for example, if that Salem plant goes down, people mailing a letter from Salem to Salem, it won't be delivered the next day. It'll go all the way to Portland to get sorted, and then all the way back to Salem to get delivered, and be delayed a day or two. And this is going to hurt a lot of people. I mean, not just the folks that lose their jobs and their families, but it's going to hurt the seniors, the elderly people who rely on pharmaceuticals arriving. You know, the prescription drugs arriving on time.
Yeah.
You know, the community newspaper that relies on their newspaper being delivered, at a certain time, or the community business that relies on their advertising to arrive on the day of the sale, or the farmer who depends on seeds coming through the mail, or getting their product out through the mail, or the home-based business who depends on getting their supplies or getting their product out through the mail. And of course, those communities that are not as connected to the internet, who rely on the mail, are going to be most impacted, which is low-income communities and rural communities. So it's the most vulnerable populations that are going to be most impacted by these changes.
Some people will say we're looking at progress and things change as time goes on, and we become more modern and have these changes that make the system work more efficiently. Isn't this the existing postal system sort of outdated? Isn't it time that we modernize as these people are talking about right now?
Well, it is outdated. There's an immediate crisis, which could be fixed by Congress, but over time, first-class mail is reducing. The amount of first-class mail a lot of communications is happening on the internet that used to happen through first-class mail. On the other hand, online shopping is producing more parcels in the mail stream.
Yes.
There's more. There's going to be a significant increase in the number of parcels, and there's all kinds of things that the Postal Service can do to adapt over time. For example, in other countries, post offices, there are 30,000 post offices in this country, in every town, in every neighborhood, that could be upgraded. There could be banking, for example. We used to have a small deposit bank postal bank in this country. We could do that again for people who don't have savings accounts or don't trust the big banks. It could be a one-stop. Post office could be one-stop government services. From renewing your driver's license to getting your hunting and fishing license to getting a notary service or check cashing service. All kinds of services could be provided at the post office and are done in other countries. Which the post office, for example, letter carriers. We go to 150 million families 6 days a week. Many of us look in on the frail and elderly to see how people are doing. Mostly management doesn't let us take the time to do that. But what if the Postal Service offered that if you put a certain amount every month to the Postal Service, the letter carrier would check in on your mother in the next town every day and send you a text message saying that mom's okay. There's things that letter carriers or the Postal Service can do that we're not doing now.
Sounds like a march towards socialism.
Well, it's a socialist institution. It's a public institution that serves everyone universally, same rates, whether you're rich or poor. That's what the Postal Service is.
There's been some speculation that in our country, in this kind of capitalism that we're practicing in America, the idea is to look at any function or anything going on and find some sort of a way to make some profit out of what's going on there, to extract some money from it. And the Postal Service, I guess, is no exception.
That's correct.
And privatization, what does privatization mean? You say a few words about that.
For the Postal Service?
For anything.
Well, what it means for the Postal Service is that the profitable portions, like the downtown businesses and the suburbs, are the ones where the private companies want to get involved. But in the post offices or the delivery areas where there's not much business and the expenses are more than the revenues, like in low-income neighborhoods in the rural areas, the private businesses don't want to be involved. Like in the post office where I worked in inner northeast Portland, low-income neighborhood, FedEx and UPS would pull up with their trucks every day and give us their parcels to deliver. In other words, they charge their customer a little bit higher rate than we do. They hand off the parcel to us and pay us to deliver it for them.
So they get
cheaper
privatization in the process somewhere, some profit. Somebody's making some money without doing any work.
That's right. And there's been a whole mistaken, I would say, policy on part of the Postal Service of giving very low rates to private pre-sort houses so that businesses will bring their mail to a private pre-sort house where they have low-wage workers, sweatshops basically, that sort the mail and then deliver it directly to the letter carrier and bypass the postal employees
Wow, that's
and
going on
that's,
now.
Yeah, that's a privatization of the mail processing. And then the postal management has been attempting, the Postmaster General has been attempting to privatize letter carrying, where they actually started contracting out to private carriers, new developments, new suburban developments. Our union negotiations, our contract negotiations broke down this last time around because the Postmaster General wanted to insist that he could contract out letter carrying. And then, of course, what's happening with post offices, rural post offices, 13,000, half the post offices in the country are threatened. The Postmaster General, starting in the fall, is offering these communities, and it's 124 of them in Oregon, the option of having their hours, the hours of service, cut 25 to 75%, which means the full-time postmaster position goes away, or have a village, what they call a village post office, which is basically privatization, which is putting in the gas station or the general store a non-postal employee who's running around selling these other products, and then when you want a stamp, they run behind and sell you a stamp. But they won't be able to offer all kinds of other, the postal services that a postal employee offers, which is, the weighing the packages and the certified mail and the insured mail and all that. That's the village post office model. And then, of course, the other choice is closure completely. And if you want to get postal services, you have to go to the next town. This is what is facing rural Oregon starting this fall.
So it seems like the people who have the money and the power are suggesting that those people that we were talking about who will be poorly served or less served in the reorganization of the post office, then those are just casualties of growth and getting and improving in modernization, and they don't count. They're not that important, and they'll survive.
Well, that's I would say the attitude of an unfortunate few who have a lot of power. Yes.
And I'm trying, as we're talking now, I'm thinking about separating my gut or my heart, my sentiments from my passion versus modernization and doing things a little more efficiently. And
well, it's not more efficient to shut down a plant and send the mail 100 miles up the road and have it come back again. I mean, certainly the gas that's spent or the transportation costs. And certainly the throwing all these people out of work has a tremendous impact on not only the individual, but families and the economy of communities. And in these rural areas where these postmaster positions are going away, I mean, the postmaster is much more than just the person who provides postal services. They're often the person that is the person that has the information in town, helps people be connected. And I was talking to one of the postmasters who was saying how she goes out to people's homes and helps them, be able to do postage online or learn how to do eBay sales, or, these are people who are leaders in their communities. They're often people who are on the school board or city council, and so the impact on local communities of these postmaster positions going away is much more than just postal service.
And you know what? If I don't take a break now, my director's going to yell at me. So let's take a break for a few minutes, and then the mics will be off, and we'll come back and resume talking about postal service. Okay, we're back. Thanks for staying tuned. And for you viewers who missed the opening of the show, Conversations with Dr. Don is an ongoing series of one-hour standalone talk shows where I interview interesting people, like most of you out there, about who they are as unique, one-of-a-kind individuals and about whatever it is we have decided to talk about tonight. And my guest tonight is deucedly interesting, talking about the post office. And I've learned more about the post office so far than I ever thought I would talking to you again.
Good.
So
That's what I'm here for.
Let's resume where we left off. And I interrupted you with saying something. Shall I ask you another question now?
Sure.
My question is, what have you been doing recently for the cause? Well, you've been talking about what you've been doing for the cause. And what is the cause?
The cause of saving the Postal Service. And right now, Congress is stuck. That is, they're out of session. They've said they're not going to vote on any postal legislation until after the election. Meanwhile, the Postmaster General is going forward with the massive closures and cuts to mail processing plants and post offices. So what I'm doing during the month of August is doing what I'm calling a postal road warrior trip.
Postal road warrior trip.
Yeah.
Whoa.
A trek throughout Oregon to meet with people in these cities and towns where they're facing closures and cuts to their mail processing plants and their post offices. And I've been to all the major cities where these mail processing plants are threatened. I've been to Salem, met with postal workers and community members there. I've been to Eugene, Springfield, and met with postal workers. And they're setting up a big community meeting for an organizing meeting for me in next week after. And I've been to Bend, where I met with a number of different community members who are concerned about their mail processing plant. I've just came back from Pendleton, and I've been to one small town so far, Powell Butte, where 20 people showed up out of a population of 2,000.
Who's paying for your gasoline?
I have a good retirement. I'm actually getting some funds from the local coalition. We call ourselves Portland Communities and Postal Workers United, and we're made up of postal workers and seniors, veterans, people from the Occupy movement, people from faith communities who are concerned about saving the Postal Service. So it's pretty much just, gasoline. Not much. People are putting me up in their homes and feeding me.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you going to save the Postal Service?
Well, I think that we can. It's nothing's clear at this point, and it's not going to happen tomorrow. Even if Congress does pass something in the fall, unless it's the fix that I hope it is, the struggle will continue. And what the Postmaster General has done already has kind of set the Postal Service into a death spiral, because big mailers are starting to take their business and go to private delivery, like Time Warner and Bloomberg News are experimenting with private delivery of magazines in some areas. Like just put them in a plastic bag and throw them up on your porch. So we need to reverse that. We need to reverse this gloom and doom about the Postal Service and talk about expanding and improving, not shrinking.
So really, how are you going to overcome Congress's not bringing this up for consideration for a genuine vote to give the president an option of whether or not to save the post office? Well,
as I said earlier, we've done all these things for the last 2 years. Now we need to build this movement broader and deeper. One of the things that my union is initiating is developing local coalitions. We have this network called Communities and Postal Workers United now. We have coalitions in Seattle and Tacoma and Portland and Eugene and San Francisco and Los Angeles and Denver and Tucson and Chicago and New York and Detroit and Philadelphia and Baltimore and New Orleans. In any case, we're getting going with developing these coalitions that include the postal workers, the most vulnerable communities who are most affected, you know, like the seniors and the low income, and particularly black and brown communities, and mailers, small business people, and continue doing what we're doing. But basically, we're going to have to figure out a way to increase the pressure, to raise the temperature of the struggle, you know, catch the spirit of the Occupy movement, of you know, the civil rights movement, a national march on Washington. My union is already organizing for a national march and rally in Washington, D.C. to save the Postal Service.
Yes.
But even as we're building this national movement to be powerful enough to knock Congress off stuck, we can save these local post offices and mail processing plants if local communities organize. Mm-hmm. What we found is that, well, like for example, in Vermont, the Postal Service has to call a hearing anytime that it closes a facility. It has to hear from the local community about the impact on jobs, services, local economic activity, the local business climate. The Postal Service will often just put a notice up in the post office, small notice, hearing in the middle of the day, way off on the edge of town, and people don't know about it, people don't show up. But if communities are attentive and intervene, like for example in White River Junction, Vermont, they got 500 people out. This is in rural Vermont, right? 500 people out to this Postal Service sponsored hearing about this plant that was scheduled for closure, or that they were studying for closure. They got both senators and the congressional representative and the governor at this hearing. And not only did they kept the plant open. It's off the closure list. This also happened in Oregon. When they scheduled these 4 plants in Oregon for closure last fall, they were to close starting in January. They held these hearings in December between Christmas and New Year's, like when nobody's in town, right? Yeah. In the middle of the day. But in Springfield, they had 300 people show up, including Peter DeFazio, the U.S. representative.
Good man.
Yeah, and in Salem, they had 200 people. In these other towns, they had good showing, and the plants in Oregon were taken off the closure list in March, and then May they were put back on again, but pushed off until January 14th. 2014. So people have time to organize. My favorite story about people defending their rural post office is Summer Lake, which is in Lake County, southeastern Oregon. Mm-hmm. In Summer Lake, the postmaster got the notice that the district postal service wanted to study the possible closure of the Summer Lake post office. And so the postmaster got the word to the mayor. The mayor got on the phone to the district and said, we need to have this hearing in the evening, and we need to have it at the community center where people are familiar.
Sure. And
working people can get there. They got the Postal Service to agree to change the hearing. And then they had 30 days to get themselves ready. And they met an hour before the hearing started. Half the people in the town showed up.
Wow. And
they went over their talking points. They posted the talking points up on the walls. They had a retired state trooper facilitate the meeting, so that it wasn't the Postal Service that was running the show. It was one of the local people. And they kept that postal representative in that room for 4 hours. And not only did they keep their post office open, but they expanded the hours of operation. So it's possible if people organize.
Yeah, however, at the very top, the postmaster, he's an appointee?
Yes, he's hired by the Postal Board of Governors. And unfortunately, the Postal Board of Governors, which is like the Board of Directors, which is appointed by the President, is primarily were appointed during the Bush administration and are primarily folks who want to privatize the Postal Service.
Yes.
Unfortunately, our current president has not been very helpful with the Postal Board of Governors. He most recently nominated James C. Miller III, who was, or renominated James C. Miller III to the Postal Board of Governors, who was the privatization czar under Ronald Reagan. And he's advocated privatization of the Postal Service for decades.
Why would the president do that?
I don't know. You answer that question. He also nominated this man named Stephen Crawford, who favors eliminating Saturday delivery and gutting union rights. Basically lowering wages and benefits for the workers. This is our current president is putting people on the Board of Governors who are going to direct the Postmaster General to do the things that he's doing, unfortunately.
And why do you think they're doing that? You know why they're doing that, why the president is doing that, because the people who put him in office, he has to not abandon them in their search for more profits and more wealth. So the electoral process needs to be radically changed. We need to get the money out of the political process and eliminate corporate personhood. I'm grinding my axe now.
That's good. No, unfortunately, the president, the Congress, the Postal Board of Governors are not on our side, and the Postmaster General should be fired. Actually, he shouldn't just be fired. We attempted a citizen's arrest of the Postmaster General back in D.C. Because he, in delaying and obstructing the mail, he's violating federal statutes. If I, as a postal worker, delayed first-class mail, I'd be fired and prosecuted. The people, just as an example, the Frederick, Maryland plant was shut down at the end of last year. The receiving plant in Baltimore was so overwhelmed with this extra mail because the Frederick plant had been shut down. The union leadership documented first-class mail sitting in trailers for 10 days. They documented advertising mail not delivered for a month. I mean, this is obstruction and delay of the mail. And like I said, we're going to give, when the Postmaster General comes to Vancouver on August 21st, the Vancouver Hilton, we're going to give him an appropriate reception.
I'd like to be there. Now, let me ask you another question. I think about Patco and Reagan and the air traffic controllers, and there's some people who say that those class of people were getting too independent and too financially stable, and they had to be cut down to size. So we have a whole new set of air traffic controllers who are paid much less than the ones who were fired. Now, carrying that thought forward, there's been some people say paranoid thinking regarding the Postal Service situation. When I was a kid in New Orleans in the 7th Ward and 9th Ward, in the Creole and black neighborhood, and they were mixed, and then the white neighborhoods, there were the finest houses were owned by people who worked for the Postal Service. So my point being, the Postal Service integrated pretty thoroughly long ago. So then now the right wing who are interested in privatizing the Postal Service say, here's our chance to do something about these people who are too comfortable and too secure, and they're black.
In fact, 21% of the postal workforce is African American. 21%. That's twice as much as the general population. And the Postal Service has been for decades a means for black people to move into middle income, stable
and they're becoming too uppity, too independent, and they're not as good as we are. So we must cut them down, and this is one of the reasons that the Postal Service is under attack.
And
what do you think of that?
There's a coalition, one of our coalitions in New York, whose slogan is, stop the closures, stop the cuts, stop the racist attacks.
Because I never heard that before.
In New York in particular, there's a lot of African Americans who work for the post office, and the post offices that are being threatened with cuts and closures are in black communities. The Bronx in particular had 17 post offices that were slated for closure. And the Al Sharpton's group, the National Action Network, they occupied a post office in Harlem that was threatened with closure. I mean, black organizations understand the importance of, during the civil rights movement, it was postal workers who had disposable income that not only helped fund the civil rights movement, but were able to be active politically because of civil service protections. They didn't have to worry about being fired like everybody else in the community.
I've not heard that slant before. That's interesting.
Yeah. So it's
So
the Postal Service is a really bedrock institution in the black community and other communities of color and among veterans. 25% of the postal workforce is veterans. It used to be that, you know, when you came home from the war, you could get a job at the post office.
Yeah.
A lot of my generation, Vietnam veterans, came home from the war and went to work for the post office. And veterans communities see the post office as an important institution for them.
So you were arrested
Yes.
occupying a local post office.
Yes, there was a local post office that's threatened with closure. In fact, it is going. We were unable to stop it. The university station over by Portland State University, the major downtown. Well, actually, there's two major downtown post offices, but it is in the Southwest, the major post office downtown.
Yes.
Many businesses use it, and as of I think the end of this year, it's going to no longer be open, and these businesses will have to, when for example they have to pick up a package, get a certified letter, whatever, will have to go all the way to 23rd and Xavier, about 1.5 miles.
Yeah.
Quite inconvenient. Businesses will choose to use private couriers. They'll, you know, this closing of the university station was unnecessary and inappropriate. The Postal Service said that they couldn't renegotiate the lease. Well, this is an excuse they're using all over the country. They sell off the post office and then they rent it. You know, then when the lease runs out, they say they can't renegotiate, and then it's gone. And this is happening all over the country, that these urban post offices, some of them are built, actually a number of them built by the WPA during the recession, during the Great Depression.
Depression, yes.
With murals and all these beautiful artworks are being shut down. And
my notes here say that you went on a hunger strike. How radical can you be? You were on a hunger strike?
Yeah. Well,
when was this and for how long?
I and a number of folks are convinced that we have to raise the level of struggle to knock Congress off the dime and to push back on the Postmaster General. And as you know, as you mentioned, we occupied the post office in the university station twice, and once we said we're not leaving until the Postmaster General assures us that this station is not going to be closed. Of course, they wouldn't get him on the phone, and they arrested us. But we also, and then shortly thereafter, 10 of us from around the country, letter carriers, clerks, truck drivers, maintenance people, mail handlers, veterans, seniors from Oregon, California, Denver, Colorado, Indiana, Maryland. We went on a hunger strike in Washington, D.C. to save the post office, and we trolled the halls of Congress in our hunger strike T-shirts, and every day shaming Congress for starving the Postal Service, by milking it with this pre-funding mandate. And we actually had an impact in that we got a lot of media coverage. I guess there's something titillating about people starving themselves, endangering their personal health. And media, we got on, LA Times, Washington Post, Chicago Tribune, CNN, McClatchy, AP, and all the different, plus lots of local newspapers, rural papers, and black community papers, and a lot of people learned about this pre-funding mandate for the first time. I mean, we were trying to get that out there, and we did. And when we were going into these congressional offices, they knew we were coming. They had heard about us from their constituents who were calling them about this pre-funding mandate and saying, "What's going on?" And so I think we reached, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people that hadn't been reached about this before. And so I feel like it's worth it.
Are you a bleeding heart liberal, a tree hugger, and all those kinds of compliments?
No. I'm a fighter for justice.
We're running short of time. Let me see if we can ask you a couple of questions here that we didn't address in our.
Okay.
Yeah. So the internet is not making the Postal Service obsolete.
No. In fact, the internet is generating business for the Postal Service. As I mentioned earlier, there's an increase of double-digit increases, 13%, 15% increases in package delivery because of online shopping. The internet is causing the reduction of first-class mail, but there's also there's ways that the internet and hard copy mail could be integrated, like in other countries like Switzerland and Sweden.
Those are socialist countries. What's the matter with you?
Must be a socialist. What can I say? Think about this. You got people sending emails to the Postal Service, who then will print them out and deliver them, hard copy. Or people send letters through the Postal Service, who will then scan them and send them to your email box. People are given the choice of having hard copy delivered, or they look at their email and they say, okay, I want this, I don't want this, I don't want this, and the Postal Service destroys the things that they don't want, and they delivers the thing that they do want. So this is hybrid hard copy digital that the Postal Service can accomplish. It's Postal Service could adapt to the digital age. It adapted to the telegraph. It adapted to the telephone.
Have you made the President's no-fly list yet?
I actually have been excluded from postal facilities after I was arrested.
Really?
Yes.
Can you go into postal facilities now?
Well, I haven't tried.
Okay.
So I'm meeting people outside.
Yeah.
No, the postal management I think, sees me as a dangerous person.
Of course.
But it means I must be doing something right.
So what are your future plans? Postal Road Warrior trip? You got me?
Yeah, I'm going off to small towns in the foothills of the Cascades, Idana, Foster, and in the Coast Range, Alsea, Walton, Notai.
All in Oregon.
Oh, these are all in Oregon. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah. In the next couple of weeks, and people are excited. I talk to them on the phone, and they say, "Yes, when can you come?" I talk to these, general store owners or postmasters or, the Grange representative. We want to keep our post office. How can we do it? When can we meet with you? So, I'm excited. I'm not a rural person, but I'm figuring out how to talk to country people.
How can our viewers get involved in this struggle you're talking about? What can you tell our viewers to help your cause or our cause?
The Communities and Postal Workers United has a website. It's cpwunited.com.
Say that again.
cpwunited.com.
Okay.
And you can go to the local coalition page and find out all the contact information for Portland, or if you're in a different town, for the other towns. And also a lot of information about how to save your local post office or how to organize a local coalition.
We have time for one more story that comes to mind for you that was particularly intriguing or stimulating or something that's in your adventures in doing the hard activist work you're doing. Any thoughts come to mind now?
Well, I was just in Powell Butte, a town of 2,000. 20 people showed up at the community center to talk about saving Connie's job, the postmaster, and their post office. And I was...
we got about 20 or 30 seconds.
Okay, well, there was an ex-postmaster there, and he said, "There's no mail. The mail is going away. You might as well just live with it. Forget about this post office. It's not possible." Well, he kind of took the meeting away. It was pretty tough because I'm an outsider and he's the local, right?
Yeah.
But we did get it turned around, and we did get some folks to commit to organizing to save that post office. But there's a lot of doomsayers out there. It's not true. The Postal Service is not broke, and we can save the Postal Service if we organize.
All right, we need to stop now. It's close to time for us to stop visiting and get ready to say goodnight. Keep your pens and pencils handy because you may want to jot down something we'll show you in the closing credits. A few public service announcements. We want to tell you about the local broadcast schedule. This is where you can watch Dr. Don's shows locally. The having is all. And to watch my shows on the web, go to my website, www.donbaham.com, and click on favorite links. Next public service announcement is about the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union. That's my favorite organization, been a member for centuries. Go to their website and learn more about the American Civil Liberties Union to save our civil liberties. And my next PSA is we get my shows broadcast regularly by your local public access station. Go to www.pegmedia.org. I think we have one more coming up here. To learn how to end corporate personhood. Yeah, we've got to end corporate personhood. Go to that site and go to www.pegmedia.org to figure out how to end corporate personhood. And I got to say thanks for watching, and I mean it. Be sure and tune in again and catch future shows of Conversations with Dr. Don. And my favorite thought for the day is go out, occupy, demonstrate, and don't roll over. Oh, remember KFC. I got to tell you about KFC, not Kentucky Fried Chicken, Dr. Don's KFC. Kind, friendly, and charitable. Be kind, be friendly, and be charitable. To you too. And you too, Jamie. And you too, Mike. And you too, Mr. Control Room. Thanks again for watching. Good night.